Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Life of Purpose. In this series, we're looking at a collection of stories and characters that are found around the birth of Jesus. And each one of them is unique, and of course, there are more characters than you could put into one series, but we're looking at four in this one. And today, we're particularly looking at the person that would be sort of the villain of the story of the birth of Jesus, and that is Herod the Great. Now, this series is entitled Shake It Up because somewhat like a snow globe, which is the symbol, it feels like this period of time, God was shaking up the world and doing something radically new, and that was all centered in the birth of Jesus Christ. So today we look at Herod, and Herod was one of those people that, well, he was complex would be an understatement. But he was known for a lot of different things.
He was. He sort of was born into a family that were, I guess, maybe upwardly mobile would be a nice way to put it. They were always trying to better themselves.
Kind of social climbers.
Social climbers. His father, Antipater, became friends with a guy named Julius Caesar.
Good person if you like. If you're climbing, that's a good
right.
One to get to
Not
know.
bad.
Yeah.
And so he becomes friends with Julius Caesar, and so Caesar asks Antipater to be able to go over and to try to rule or to put some kind of system in place in Judea, because the Roman Empire had conquered the area. And, well, then after Caesar's death and Antipater's death, Herod's there. Well, you know, after Caesar's death, there's this great struggle for power that happens. Mark Antony becomes very powerful. And so Herod the Great, he lobbies toward Mark Antony. He builds a fortress on the edge of, in the wall of the city of Jerusalem, and he names it the Antonia Fortress after Mark Antony. Well, but then Mark Antony left power. You know, he was killed. And so in that moment, well, Herod would never let his allegiance slow him down. He quickly pivots and becomes a staunch supporter of Octavian, who would become Caesar Augustus. And so he becomes a friend of his. And he doesn't want to be a governor. He doesn't want to be a Roman governor of this area. He doesn't want to be a proconsul. He doesn't want to be anything like that. He wants to be king. And so he actually goes to Rome and petitions the Roman Senate to name him the king of Judea. And so he arrives back as Herod the Great, king of Judea. Now, a lot of problems with that. Mainly being that the Hasmonean dynasty that has ran Judea doesn't really like this.
Yeah, and that's Jewish heritage.
Oh yeah, Jewish heritage, deep Jewish heritage that they've been in charge of this country, these people for a long time, and the temple, and now they're losing power.
And Herod, his kind of a claim on being the Jewish king is a little suspect.
It is, because Herod was technically an Edomite, which meant he was not necessarily Jewish.
He could go back to Abraham.
Yeah.
But
not, he's not Jewish. So he marries Mariamne, who is a daughter in the Hasmonean family. And so he marries a member of the Hasmonean family to give himself some kind of credence.
So he's upwardly mobile by knowing the folks in Rome.
Right.
And he marries into the Jewish dynasty.
Right.
And so he, in his mind, has all the qualifications really necessary to run the place.
Yes. And because he marries into the Hasmoneans and then deems that he's sort of like now the head of the Hasmonean family, he's now basically in charge of the temple. And so he begins to appoint high priest. High priest used to be a system where it was like for life. You inherited it, then your son inherited it, and your son after it. Now he's appointing them, and he's appointing them for 1 year at a time. That way no one gets too much power. But see, Herod had an issue in that he was a bit paranoid.
Just a bit.
He knew that his hold on power, he owed all that to Rome. They could take it away. He knew that he wasn't really Jewish, and the Hasmonean marriage, well, that might not work to get him. He never became endeared to the Jewish people. And so he was very paranoid that someone was going to mess with his world. And so he began doing things that none of us would ever think of doing.
Well, one of the first was his mother-in-law sort of tried to pull back a little bit more of the Hasmonean power.
Right.
And he just had her killed.
He had her killed. He eventually had his father-in-law killed. He eventually, because his wife was still very popular with the Hasmoneans and made her popular with the Jewish people, and their firstborn son was also very popular with people, he had them exiled. Then he married again. He had her killed. Then he married again, and he produced more children. And then he had his first wife's 17-year-old brother, named the high priest of Israel. Didn't go over well.
That's probably the youngest one they'd had.
Probably, yes,
probably
absolutely,
30 years.
Absolutely. And so then he wasn't horrible, and people liked him. And so after the first year, they wanted him reappointed actually for the second year. So he had him killed. You sort of see a trend here.
Yeah, there's a trend. Not really good to know Herod.
No. The common phrase was that it was better to be Herod's pig than a member of his family. Because, if you're a member of his family, and if anybody waves at you on the street and smiles, he thinks you're going to be more popular than he is, and he has you killed.
And he has this other side to him, though, as often people with a lot of ambition do, in that he could pull off public work projects that exist to this day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you can still tour, the Temple Mound, though the top has been destroyed, the walls are still standing. And that's the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, are stones that Herod had placed there to build Temple Mound. And then on the sea, you had
Caesarea by the sea, Caesarea Maritime, Caesarea Maritima, depending on which term you like to use for it. It was an area with just this gradual entry into the water. I mean, it was not deep at all. And Herod, in that era of time, BC, Herod goes in and builds a deep sea port. He built through building all of these these large walls and bringing the ocean in. He makes a deep sea port. He builds a hippodrome. He builds an amphitheater, a temple to Caesar. It is a truly Roman city that he builds on the Mediterranean with the understanding or the hope that Caesar would come and see him one day.
Well, just imagine what he could have done if he'd had access to 38.
Right.
He could have gone out, built a deep sea port right there amongst all of the... it would have been
great.
Hippodrome. It would have been an amazing thing. But not the kind of geology to build a port. And they didn't even have fresh water. So he has to go, and they have to basically drill with BC equipment, drill into a mountain to hit a stream in order to then connect the stream to Roman-style aqueducts that he puts running down the coastline to bring the fresh water down to this port. And he had, next to the ocean, a freshwater pool.
Yes.
Which is an amazing feat. Then he had the Herodian, which used to be two little mountains. But he wanted a really secure fortress. And so, by a lot of human power, they brought in enough rock and dirt that the two became one. And on the top of that, he built a white marble palace that he could see for miles, and it was higher than the temple in Jerusalem. So he kind of felt like, I bested them.
Right.
And,
yeah, I mean, the historians say that he had the engineering done so that when he stood on the round tower on the top of the Herodian, his head was higher than the top of the temple, so that he was higher than the Israelites' temple. That, I mean, and also, I mean, your way you described the building, it made sense to people in the time of Jesus, several years down the road, in the time of Jesus, when he says, if I say to this mountain, be moved, well, they've seen a mountain move.
Right.
Or if I say to this mountain, be moved and be thrown into the sea, they've watched a mountain be thrown into the sea to build a deep sea port. I mean, some of the referencing that Jesus uses are things that the Jewish people have seen because of Herod the Great.
And now the Herodian was one of several sort of emergency pit stops in case all went south.
Right.
And literally, he would go south
to
the ultimate fortress, which was at Masada, and still to this day is very much a part of Israel's history. And it was a nearly impregnable. And in fact, some of the Jewish people took over that at the end of when Rome was coming.
Right.
And it took Rome, if I remember, months, if not a year.
It took a very long time. They had to end up building a ramp to get them up there because the Jewish people, the Jewish rebels standing inside of it, were going to be there for as long as they chose to be there.
Because there was food. Herod had put food stores up there. And it also had a pool on the side of a cliff with water that somehow made it to the top.
It is an amazing thing because so little water falls out there. But he had designed the top of Masada to capture every drop of water, push it off into channels that would then bring it into these massive cisterns he had dug into the mountaintop. And so the water was then underground, so it stayed cool. He also, at Masada, he had the Roman bath. He had one at the Herodian. He had one in Caesarea where you're heating water for the solarium and you're cooling water for the frigidarium, and he would move from one to the other. He lived in this mixture of, he is an Edomite who's married into the Jewish family, but he wants to be Roman more than anything else. He wants to be a Roman. And so he lives in that mixture, and he has put it all together and has amassed this structure of his country with his winter palace in Jericho and his seaport. And, I mean, all of these things that he has, and it's all, though, he feels is just sitting balanced precariously because he feels like something or someone's going to come and take this away, probably by sheer strength, come and fight him and take it, like a family member that's too popular and rallies an army against him. And then he gets attacked, as he would put it or see it. He gets an attack from an area and from an attacker he never saw coming. Wise men show up.
Yeah, this paranoid man who has done everything to grasp power has these kind of bizarre magi, where we get the word magician. They're sort of, I always think of on Monty Python when you have the magician there, Tim, the mighty Tim.
I always think of the old Carson show with Karnak, with wearing the big hat and funkin' Wagnall's porch kind of thing.
So they show up and they say, "We're here looking for the king and the Jews." I'm sure that triggered Herod.
Right. When you are the Rome Roman Senate appointed king of the Jews, and now strangers appear and
And they're looking for the one that's going to be born.
yes, we understand, we have seen the star, and we understand that the actual king of the Jews has been born, and we'd like to know where to find him.
Could you tell us where he's at?
Which part of the palace do you have him in? And Herod is like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
This
don't know what
isn't
they're
good.
talking about. But if you run across him, let me know, because I'd really like to see him too.
Yeah, I want to go and celebrate with him, welcome him into
It'll
the
be
world.
a big party.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been quite an event.
So then he does, for all of the great things that he does in history, as far as what he builds physically, he does one of the worst things that he's known for, probably more so than anything else,
Right.
which is to slaughter every child 2 and under in the Bethlehem area.
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Yeah,
massacre of the innocents
massacre of the innocents
is what he's remembered for.
thing.
So you have this person who is remembered one way, but as a great builder, but also at a spiritual level is remembered as the villain in the story of Jesus. Now, it just so happens God gives them wisdom. They escape. They get out of the way so that Herod can't destroy them. But he goes down in history in a way probably that he didn't intend to go down in history.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really sad as you look at the rest of his life. It just got worse and worse and worse.
Oh, yeah.
More people killed, and more people killed, and more people killed.
Well, and when he gets to the point, the end of his life, I mean, he has spent so much time trying to amass all this power, trying to force people to like him among the Jewish people. And he knows that he is hated. And he is in Jericho at the Winter Palace, and he's dying. So he sends word through his advisors. He sends word, and they gather up prominent Jewish men, well-loved, well-respected Jewish men from the best families, the biggest families, and they take them to Caesarea by the sea, to the hippodrome that he built. And he has them placed in that hippodrome. And the order was that when he died in Jericho, that when word reached them in Caesarea, they were to kill all of those men, so that on the news of his death, great weeping would be recorded in Israel.
Because otherwise there wouldn't be.
No one was going to weep for him. Fortunately, after his death, people realized that he wasn't going to be alive to punish them. And so they didn't kill the men, and they released them. But what a sad ending to this life. He truly lived in that fear that somebody was going to come and take his power, to take his position, to claim his throne. And he never knew that it was going to happen when God would send his son into this world as a baby, and that little baby was going to shake up everything. And that little baby truly did shake up Herod's life.
Somebody once said that of all the people that believed that Jesus was Messiah, it was Herod, because it shook up his world.
Absolutely.